Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast, where grit meets growth. With your host, Nic Espanet, bringing you stories of resilience, reinvention, and the real climb to success.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Today we're joined by Eric Fillman. Eric is a MD, MBA, and a lawyer. He's also a pathologist at Clinical Pathology Laboratories. Eric, hey, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Glad to have you. Can you let our listeners know a little bit about you, kind of your journey?
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a lot of different experiences, so I can't wait to visit with you.
One thing I wish I was a lawyer, and I do want to go to law school, but I'm not a lawyer yet. So
Okay, aspiring lawyer. Okay.
aspire. Yeah, my daughter, my wife is an attorney, and my daughter is an aspiring lawyer. That probably on my LinkedIn.
You know what? It says father to aspiring
Yeah.
lawyer. So,
Yeah. But despite my appearance now, I served almost 24 years in the military. Did my undergrad in Pennsylvania, originally from Pennsylvania. Married to my high school sweetheart, Faith Schneck Fillman. Went to Millersville University, was in ROTC, got my commission through ROTC, and then applied to medical school. Fortunately, got in. Otherwise, I would be a field artillery or armor officer in the military.
yeah.
But I went to the Uniformed Services University, which Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, or the F. Edward Aber School of Medicine, which was set up in the early 1980s as the only military medical school.
Okay.
And did my medical school there, then did my transitional internship at the original Walter Reed, and then did my APCP pathology residency, anatomic and clinical pathology residency in San Antonio, Texas, split between Brooke Army Medical Center and Wilford Hall Medical Center, which actually no longer exists. I know I'm getting dated because about 3 or 4 of the hospitals that I trained at and worked at during my military career, actually those buildings no longer exist or are not used as hospitals. So I'm showing my age. I did my first duty station was at Fort Hood, which was just a phenomenal experience, which is why they call it the Great Place. And worked with some phenomenal people, including my boss, Colonel retired Kerry Brady. And he was the first pathologist to go into Iraq after 2003 when we invaded Iraq. And I followed in his footsteps about 2 or 3 pathologists later. And we both did 6-month stints in Iraq, which for me, it was the purest form of medicine that I ever practiced. I worked with amazing clinicians, surgeons, nurses, and other ancillary staff, and was deployed there for 6 months and returned, and then eventually did a fellowship in dermatopathology, skin pathology.
Okay.
And then I kind of homesteaded at Brooke Army Medical Center because I was fellowship trained and also was the associate program director for the residency program for a period of time.
Okay.
And then eventually retired from the military, just shy of 24 years, and retired in the end of March 2019. And they sometimes say that your first job out of the military is usually not your last, and that was the case for me. I joined a group, and then about 4.5 years later, landed where I currently am at Clinical Pathology Laboratories in Austin, Texas, and I was working there. I live in New Braunfels, and it's halfway in between San Antonio and Austin. And now I was offered kind of what radiologists do, where they can work remotely. So I do all my pathology remotely. I don't look through a microscope anymore, surprisingly, and do all my cases on a daily basis via my computer. The slides get scanned, and I sit and work through my cases. And I don't just do dermatopathology. I like to do all pathology, whether it be GYN, uh, GU pathology, breast pathology, and dermatopathology. So that's kind of my story. And I've now been retired, I guess, coming up on 7 years now. So, and I still love my job. I love what I do. And I am glad there's no other field of medicine that that I would have gone into except pathology.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a neat journey you've had. And first of
Yeah.
all, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
That's awesome, and I appreciate that. And so, going through your journey to become a pathologist, just to become a physician, and then you make a lot of achievements as a pathologist. What is something that set you apart that helped you have some of your success?
I think, I tell residents and younger staff that I've worked with over the years in the military is volunteer for the hard jobs. I I volunteered to go to Iraq, but there was kind of a carrot at the end of that stick because in the military, you usually have to do a little something extra to get selected by the military to go and do a civilian fellowship. Because I did a civilian dermpath fellowship at the University of Colorado under Dr. Golitz and Dr. Fitzpatrick, and Dr. Whitney High. And it was an amazing experience. And I've always, like I said, tell people volunteer for the hard jobs that nobody else wants to do. And that sometimes, I think it sets you apart.
Yeah, and that's been a common theme with some of my other guests at times is, take on the hard job, show your either supervisors or people that you're willing to take on those challenging things.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're not the first person to tell me that.
Yeah.
So that's an awesome line of
Yeah.
thinking.
And I think, always try. If I had my choice, and if I was independently wealthy with a pot of gold, I would be a professional student. I am always interested in getting more education. That's why I went for my MBA in healthcare administration because I wanted to see how the other side works.
Yeah.
So, and I really would love to go to law school as well. And, but like I said, both my wife is an attorney and my daughter is going to be an L1 at my wife's alma mater, St. Mary's University in San Antonio. And, they're the only ABA accredited online program that's, like I said, ABA accredited, and I would love to do that. But it would be a big task with working as well. But
Yeah. That's
but
quite a challenge. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome. Well, I mean, be a lifelong student, that's another common theme, I think, among the people we have on the Flex Forward podcast that have had success. And it may not be a formal education, but, reading books or taking on mentors or watching uh, TED Talks or different. I mean, you can find some of the greatest education or
yeah,
classes online. Now, you won't get the official degree, but you
yeah.
can you can view some Harvard
And
classes or
yeah, exactly. And on LinkedIn, and those TED Talks are amazing. And I have to say, when I was doing my MBA, I really gravitated towards Steve Jobs' speeches.
okay.
I know that he was a very difficult person to work for, but his lectures and what he says, I've pulled up multiple snippets of interviews that people have had with him, and I think one of the greatest um, commencement speeches, and to me, maybe one of the greatest speeches of all time, is his 2006 Stanford commencement speech, where he gives three stories and basically tells it that there is a reason for everything in your life, whether it be positive or a negative. Him getting canned, so to speak, from the former Pepsi CEO that came into Apple and took
Mhm.
over as the board of directors or CEO. and kicked him out or fired him, you know, we never would have had Pixar. We never would have had movies like Toy Story. And he took a class in calligraphy when he dropped out of college because his adopted parents were blue collar, similar to mine, and they couldn't afford it. And he didn't see any value in getting his degree, but sat in a calligraphy course. And he highlights that if it wasn't for that calligraphy course, we wouldn't have the beautiful calligraphy that is on all the Apple and Microsoft applications in Microsoft Word. And so it's an extremely inspiring speech. He does talk about his cancer diagnosis, and unfortunately, he did get treated, but I think at the end, he unfortunately had a neuroendocrine tumor of his pancreas and succumbed to it. But I can't get enough of hearing about Steve Jobs, and I would love to read his one famous biography. But I'm a big movie buff, and I watched a lot of his documentary movies.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check some of those out.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that kind of feeds into this next question. If you may have just answered, but if someone is listening and wants to, could you recommend a book or podcast or something that you've done that's helped you with, self improvement, your job, and some things along those lines?
I think the TED Talks are great. You know, I've listened to a collection of those. But like I said, I think listening to Steve Jobs's online interviews and I encourage anyone to listen to that 2006 commencement speech at Stanford. You can Google it, 2006 Steve Jobs Stanford commencement speech. It's
I made
phenomenal.
myself a note.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a note. I'm gonna look it up when I
Yeah.
finish up today.
Yeah.
Well, through your journey, what's one of your biggest challenges you've had to overcome?
Let's see. That's a tough one. I think maybe the toughest challenge in my field in medicine and particularly pathology is we're headed for a severe shortage of physicians in this country. And I think the AMA has estimated by 2030. I can't remember exactly the exact number, but short like 25,000 physicians across the country. It might be more than that because it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I know in my field in pathology, we have a severe shortage. And I think the hardest thing, especially for a younger pathologist, and I struggled with this when I came out of the military because I was not doing a workload as much in the military as I am in civilian side. I think adapting to the volume and complexity of cases, and I think that would go for any clinician, you know, comparable to clinicians is having to see a patient in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And having to do that all day without a lunch break, it's a challenge. And I think one thing, and I've seen this in my own healthcare, I'm still seeing in the military system, which has been a blessing. And both the VA and the military, and I'm sure the civilian side has done this too, is the ability to use AI to basically sit and actually listen to the patient rather than sitting and documenting everything without paying attention what the patient is really trying to tell you about their chief complaint. And I think AI, I know that it's a mixed bag. Some people feel that, you know, it might not be the best solution to some of our problems, but I think I think in that case in medicine, it's very helpful. Records it, and they can annotate and change the text of the interaction between the doctor and patient, and it saves some time for them, and they don't have to be doing their notes at 1 o'clock in the morning and have to wake up the next morning at 6, 7 o'clock to get into work. For
It
me,
makes it more efficient.
Yeah.
So my wife was a scribe 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
She followed ER physicians around. She at one point thought she was planning on going to med school, but things changed. But the doctor that started it, he hired just a couple of college students just to follow himself around.
Yeah.
that because one, his handwriting was bad, and two, to be more efficient. And then
Yeah.
within a few years, all the other ER doctors in that big
Yeah.
hospital in Fort Worth he had a company that did it at that point.
Yeah.
They just every ER doctor had a student that followed them around, a college undergrad student, not a med student, but she learned just the term. I think it's a great role for somebody wanting to go to med school because you're getting a lot of terminology,
Yeah.
language, you're learning bits. Plus, you're seeing it. I know that was only ER medicine, but you're seeing a lot of stuff
Yeah.
that
And that,
people don't get
and,
to see.
and that would be amazing for a college student, like you said, that wants to go to medical school. Because what I did when I was an undergrad was, um, my college was in near Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not Lancaster, California, like some people pronounce it, but Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I went over to Lancaster General Hospital as a undergrad student and was a volunteer in the ER, and also back home at my hospital in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I did that as well and volunteered. And fortunately, there were a couple physicians that were receptive to actually having a college student following them around. But that's definitely doing the scribing would be phenomenal. You would get phenomenal experience, like you said, with the verbiage and the language, and ask questions of the physicians if they have enough time.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
And it helped his charting went improved significantly too.
Well,
And that was his ultimate goal or initial
and
goal.
And fortunately for that, with the AI and also Scribe, is that they don't get bogged down with you need to get these notes in within a certain period of time,
Sure.
so we can get paid, and the whole revenue billing cycle, which
Sure.
is part of that process. If it's not, they always say in medical legal. In the medical legal field, if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Exactly.
So,
For sure. Well,
yeah,
congratulations. It sounds like things are going well and you're
yeah.
keeping you busy and running. So, a lot of people, as they start having more success, start looking at potential outside investments or opportunities. And you ever think about anything to create mailbox money, like stocks, bonds, real estate, anything like that could help you just where you got money coming in when you're not working?
I mean, I've always invested over the years. I mean, for an example, for my daughter for medical school or for law school, excuse me, I've been contributing to her 529, and her law school is her undergrad was paid by the post 9/11 GI Bill because of my last 4 years of military service, and
Nice.
I've been putting into her college fund since the day she was born. So, and my wife and I have been saving and have a nice nest egg, but I don't really foresee myself uh, retiring anytime soon. I'm 53, but I love what I do, and
Yeah.
if my health and everything else works out, I've told people that I'll probably die at my microscope. So,
There you go.
or at my
That's
computer,
awesome.
or at my computer screen now.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Well, as for wrapping up our interview, do you have any exciting plans or initiatives in the next 6 to 12 months?
Um, Trying to think. Actually, yeah. I would really like to just kind of get in and see what it's like to prepare for the LSAT. I saw my daughter do it, and she put the hard work in, but unfortunately didn't get as high of a score as we had hoped. And all three of us, my wife, myself, and my daughter, never did really well on standardized tests. I didn't have amazing MCAT scores, and but I'd like to consider studying for that and preparing, because I've kind of done the medicine. I've done a little bit of the business with my MBA, and now I'd like to get in a little more. And, I would really probably like to do some medical legal work. And I have done some consulting on that front. And I find it very interesting and
Sure.
very eye opening, because thinking like a lawyer versus thinking like a doctor is very, very different.
No, for sure. Yeah, that's different, almost like different sides of your brain. That
Yes. Yeah.
we had a conversation. I had coffee with some guys a day or two ago, and one of my friend's daughter just or is prepping for the LSAT. I have a daughter that's she's going to be a junior undergrad, and she's been studying all summer, talking about just it's the MCAT is more. You need to do facts. I think my understanding it. You need to know some medical stuff. Whereas the LSAT is really reading something, interpreting it, and recalling it. So it's a different.
Yeah. And a lot of logic.
Yes.
And sometimes, I will sometimes get in arguments with my wife because she's a lawyer, I'm a physician. We have very different views on approaching a problem. And um, it's very different thinking like a lawyer versus thinking like a physician. Very
For
different.
sure.
And,
Yeah.
obviously, if thankfully I've never been involved, but if I've listened to a podcast called The L Word, which is about litigation in medicine, and that's been very eye-opening in that knowing what to do if and when you get involved in a medical legal case, and basically keep calm and learn about the law and also learn about your craft and know your case so you can defend it. So, yeah, it's very, very different.
No, for sure. Well, great. Well, Eric, it's so good to chat with you today, and thank you for your time. If
Yeah.
listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I don't know if you have a copy of my CV, but my email, probably my work email, would be the best since my Gmail gets full of junk mail, but my email is efillman, and just like it sounds, Fillman at cpl labs.com.
Awesome. Great stuff. Eric, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Been great to have you and listen to you. And listeners, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like and share this episode. Eric, thanks again. I really enjoyed
Yep.
getting to know you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Flex Forward podcast. If you've got grit, growth, and a great story, visit flexforwardpodcast.com/guest to apply and join us on the show.